Thank you very much, and welcome everyone to this webinar session. I'm thrilled to have Nicki Vee with us, and more about Nicki in a minute. For those of you who don't know me, my name is David Munro-Jones. I'm the Operations Director for the IAPC&M. I'm also the Acting Head of Accreditation. And the session today, with Nicki, is very much born from conversations that Nicki and I and Nicki, Dawn and I have had over the years about, how does current coaching compare with what really goes on in the real world. So let me tell you a little bit about Nicki. I know all of this to be true because I've got it written down in front of me with her biography. So Nicki's background was as an MD and Human Resource Director of European Leisure PLC, responsible for 70 million turnover and 3,000 staff. She then used her tenacious style to perform a dramatic financial turnaround for Bupa. And if a lot of people know that, I'm surprised that Nicki hasn't also been offered a position in the new cabinet based on that. Nicki has become well known within the UK as the top female coach, and throughout the master coach programs as the go-to mentor for coaches, trainers and consultants. During her first year as an executive coach, working with companies such as Whitbread, Southwest Trains and Sky TV, she easily achieved an income of 100k without a business card, an office, a brochure or a website. Then the V's became very well known as the relationship couple, coaching thousands of singles and couples to achieve the ultimate intimate relationship through their products, programs and famous seminars. The passion for sharing the art of coaching began with the early stage of Coach to Coach program. Company Master Coach trained thousands of people in their unique V coaching strategy. She says understanding human psychology and utilizing this art form so that people make decisions that they can follow on is the only way to build a solid business, and is our way of serving mankind at the highest level. Today we are fortunate that Nicki is with us to talk about some of the myths of coaching, and there are 10 key statements within there, and I'm going to hand over really to Nicki to really go through this and answer the question why the old style of coaching won't currently work for for us as coaches, and more importantly for our clients. Nicki, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you so much, David, and thank you for that lovely introduction. I do trust that the internet will hold out, but I heard you breaking up a bit, so please do tell me if you lose me at all. I think the reason why I chose to say that there are these myths about coaching is because throughout my time training probably thousands of coaches in what I call the alternative coaching methods, I've seen how often they do learn what I call a more traditional, more kind of practical style of coaching. And so I know you were saying, does the old method work, which I take that on the chin, David, is that actually, because I was trained in late 90s, I suppose my style is more the old style. But I think even then, when I was in HR, there was very much a belief that, the GROW model was the ultimate tool. And I'm not knocking the GROW model. I'm just saying that it has its limitations. And the reason why I believe that I'm saying the old style, which is because that's the way I was taught, is the best way, is because it's the best way for coaches to connect with their clients so that coaching can take place in a different way, so that the client gets not just a result, but a new learning about themselves. So the reason why, as I say, I chose these 10 myths was There are a lot of myths about coaching which are based on the mind. They're based on the practical. They're based on the belief that, this is a practical, kind of like can't think of the word, a way of interacting with a client as a coach that is a step-by-step process which takes them from not sure about something to very sure about something. And what I'd like to do is share today why I believe that there is a lot more than coaches can do, which isn't making anything they're doing wrong, but that can take us to a better, higher level of interaction with our clients, so the clients get a different experience. I can see somebody's face. Hello there. Don't know whether you have a ability to ask me a question, but I'm happy to answer questions if you have any. But I suppose I'd just like to take the first myth first, because it's quite a big one, which is that coaches need to be good listeners. And I rather an extreme response to that is that I think the problem with listening is that the nature of the mind is to find solutions. And I don't believe that that's our job as a coach to find solutions. I believe that if we can come out of the mind and connect enough with the person that we're coaching and be in that state where we understand where they are, so that we ask them questions so that they have new realizations about where they are, so that they can make new decisions that they follow through on. And the reason why I say all of that about following through is so many times I hear, sadly, people say, well, I had coaching and I made I thought I'll, lose weight, get my relationship to improve, earn more money, whatever it is they're having coaching from. But people don't follow through. And I believe that the reason they don't follow through and the reason why they don't have a different experience is because they have a situation whereby the coaching helps them to logically look at what they're doing, but it doesn't have them have a deeper sense inside of them about how they could best adjust their behavior in order to get a different outcome. So I know that's an alternative way of looking at it. I can't see you, David, at the moment, so I don't know whether you could come back in and say, okay, we've heard you first, Smith. But I can see someone. I don't know whether you can communicate with me to let me know what you have to think about that.
Yeah, we can. Sorry, probably because we've got bigger screens. Yes, we can. I think it's interesting that you say about we're not there to solve problems, bearing in mind that one of the methodologies is solution-focused coaching, which almost says straight away, right, here's a model to solve your problem. And I think that can I just interject there? I think you've made a really great point. Is that yes, we are here to solve problems, but we're not here to give advice. My philosophy is that we coach in a way that is much more intuitive. It's much more about where the person's at, and then we stimulate the person to have realization about where they are, so that they make new decisions that create solutions. And I think that's the big difference for me, is that we're not trying to solve the issue, which is what the mind will do. It can't help it. We're all human. We're going to go. And this is why one of the other myths I might have said is that to listen to the story and to listen to the victim story, I know that sounds harsh, but to listen to the victim story is not serving the client, because it's insinuating that the thing out or the person outside of them is the problem, and that actually they are the innocent victim of this problem. So how do they deal with it? And that's why I very strongly believe that we have to enter their world and help them come to a realization of how to handle and solve the issue by how they adjust themselves, not try and adjust the other person or the other situation. Okay. Mindful of time, so because lots of lots of myths to go through here. So your second myth, which builds into that, was that you should capture what they want to achieve.
Yes. I think that the biggest thing I could share with coaches is to be in the moment. And when I say in the moment, I mean in the moment. I'm going to say something now which is very contentious. I train with Tony Robbins, allegedly the best coach in the world, by the way, who I'm a great fan and a great friend of. So I'm not knocking him in any way. And sometimes when I went on numerous occasions, myself and my son, Nick James, we traveled all over the world as trainers and coaches and crew to be with him. And one of the things that I felt like his team did, not Tony, was that they would take people's form, which might have been filled in ages before, and go like, this person's trying to deal with their shitty childhood. Right, we need to do this NLP process with them. I totally disagree with that. I think that you have to be in the moment that you're speaking to the person. You need to help them with the kind of questions and the kind of, forget the questions for a minute, the kind of presence you need to have with them so that they're open to looking at themselves in this issue. And therefore, to be in the moment, I do not believe it's any value at all to capture, record, write down what they think is the problem, because what they think is the problem is the presenting problem. And if you try and coach the presenting problem, you're going to coach it from this level, this mind level. Whereas actually, if you see the presenting problem as just them doing the best they can with the resources they've got at the moment, and they are saying the problem is him, her, it, them, they, that actually as a coach, if you stay in the moment, you find out where they're at right now. One of my favorite questions is, are you asking me to help you with the issue that is being presented? And are you asking me to help you cope with the issue that's being presented? Or are you asking me to help you solve the thing that's being presented? Because the reason why those questions are so good is because you're really getting the person to think, okay, I'm in this situation, I don't like it. It's not how I want things to be. Now, do I want my coach to help me cope with this emotion, feeling, belief, upset? Or do I want to get my coach to help me resolve it? In which case, if the answer to me is I want my coach to deal with the upset, then I'm going to help them deal with the upset. If they say no, but I want you to coach me to how to resolve it, I'm still going to deal with their upset, and I'm still going to get to the bottom of what's, and I know this is hard to take, is to what part they've played in having that situation. Because the biggest gift we can give to our clients is to help them get out of victim and into a powerful space where that person feels and understands their part in the issue, and that then they have something which they have power over. Because we only have power over what we can handle as individuals. We do not have power over other people. If we try and tell our clients how to handle another person, we're basically teaching them how to control another person or how to try and change another person. And that will never work. So to capture it, to write it down, to talk about it, to go back to it, for me is a complete waste of time and energy. And also, I will say this, I've never taken a note, because even a week or a day later, I realized it was 2 o'clock here and 1 o'clock there. I was talking to one of our clients who 3-4 days ago was in a terrible state, going to leave his wife and children, in terrible state, feels like the victim of everything. And in a half an hour coaching session, I got him to see what he was doing that was putting him in this space. We got to understand his beliefs, we got to understand and we also agreed how he could behave in a way and interact in a way with his partner that was going to be much more loving, much better. And 3 days later, he's written me the same email. And he's written me an email that says, I'm still where I was. And all I've written back to him is, I understand. I mean, I realise you're back where you were 3 days later, but what's the truth? Are you really back there? Or actually you're in a different place? And is that place more helpful, or is it unhelpful to healing this situation between you and your family? Or are you just going to take the coward's way out and you're just going to leave because that's the coward's way out? And I know that, you know, because I'm a D profile, I don't know how much the people that listen to your listening today understand the or know of the different profiles, but obviously I'm very direct. I'm very say it as it is. But you see, sometimes with a client, you need to show them, not just hold a mirror up, but show them that they are themselves actually destroying the very thing they think they want. So that's why I don't believe it's put any use to capture stuff which is now hours and days old and is not where they are right now.
It's interesting because what you've just talked about there, so like leads into two more myths, which I'm going to come on to. But one of the things that you were saying was reminded me of something that the late Chris Coffey mentioned, which was, you know, the process of, you know, like coaching or mentoring or you know, counseling, or whatever word you want to use, it is very simplistic. It's the work that's not easy. You know, you've got to face up to, you know, the things that you want. And he used to say to many clients in his, you know, sort of anecdotes that, look, if you just want somebody to chat to, go and talk to somebody else. Yeah, I'm not that sort of person. Okay,
I'm far too
I will ask you
expensive
the
for
question.
that.
Yeah, I'll ask you the questions that you do not want to answer. You're like, or even, you know, and go. I will take you to the places you don't want to go to. So picking up from
expression. I love the expression. I'm going to ask you questions which you can't ask yourself. That's what I love, because look, we're all, you know, depending on how much personal development we've done, we can all ask ourselves questions. You know, I've been challenged over the last few days because my mom, who's 95, has been very poorly back in Birmingham, and I'm here in Sardinia. And I've asked myself the question, do I feel guilty? No. Do I feel duty to go home? No. Do I want to go home because I want to hug her and, you know, help her feel safe? Yes. So tomorrow morning I'm getting a plane and flying home. So I think that, but I realised, sorry, I missed it out. I realised that I was still running the pattern of, I want to go home and control everything. I want to go home and make sure everything's done properly. And as soon as I realised that those are my patterns, I realised what I need to let go of. I realised what I still have to work on. And all we can do as coaches is teach and share and ask questions that have coaches have our clients as coaches. We need to help our clients have such a finite understanding of their own patterns. And once they do, then we can help them. Then we can help them overcome them. We can help them find ways to deal with them when they happen. We can find ways for them to communicate from a different place than their old patterns, and everything can work. But you see, until we handle our own stuff, we can't be world-class as coaches. Can't do it. We have to see where, whatever level of involvement we have to see where our work on ourselves is still needed.
Okay, so just going back to when you were talking about, you know, something like working with clients, yeah, two of the myths that popped up for me there. One of them was about, you know, you need to keep your distance, and the other one that came up as well was the comment about, you know, like counselling is about the past and coaching is about the future.
Well, let me deal with the second one first. The myth is that counsellors, and I'm not knocking counsellors, by the way, you know, at all, is that they go into the past, into the situations that happened in the past and delve around in them and try their very best to, I don't know, find some way for people to see that differently That's my assumption. Maybe I'm being generous, maybe I'm being harsh, I don't know. But I do know from the coaches that I've trained who were counsellors that they go, you know, the way I was trained as a counsellor was I just get people to talk about what happened in the past. Okay. And a lot of people say to me, I want you to coach me, Nicki, because I understand that counselling's for the past and coaching's for the future. And I go, well, I don't want to burst your bubble and I'm happy to work with you. But here's the thing, coaching's about the past and the future. Because until we can see in the past how, and I just want to say something. In my early days as a coach, and maybe this was just where I was able to get to myself, I realized that I was going into the past and doing some great work. I'm not knocking myself for anything that I was taught. Some great forgiveness processes, some great looking at the past, reframing it, lots of NLP, lots of all of that. But as I got older or mature as a coach and I look back, I went, you see, but what I never gave anybody, and which is the gift we can give people as a coach, is when you're in the past, which I don't believe most counsellors do, when you're in the past, that you have the person look at themselves. Hardest thing to do as a coach, by the way, because people think that means we're looking at what they did wrong. We're not. And that's why you have to be very skilled as a coach to say, let's look at you. Let's see the picture of what happened in the past. And let's look at you and bless you. You were doing the best you could with the resources you had. And let's not make anything you were wrong. But what are you noticing about yourself that you've never noticed before? And people come up with the most amazing things. They come up with, oh God, you know what, Nicki? I realised that even though I've always blamed him, her, them, they, you know, I realised that I was difficult. I was emotional. I was this, I was that, I was the other. But also they come up with things like, but I was like really loving and I was really giving and I was really this. And that's when I teach people to recognise there is no bad or good in the past. There is no bad or good in the past. That when our clients see themselves in the past, whether they see themselves doing stuff that wasn't helpful, which is the words I use, or they see themselves as doing stuff that was in their minds got what I call a good label on it. But sometimes, I mean, my best example of this, and I'll try and keep this very brief, is working with people who have had sexual abuse. When actually they recognize that they were the good little girl or good little boy. And I go, bless you, bless you, bless you, that you went through this horrible situation. But are you open to the possibility that the more good you were, the more, and you can probably see me thinking, I need to find the right words because I know there'll be people listening to this who may have gone through it, is whilst you look at yourself in your past as the younger you, the little girl, the little boy, can you recognize that even though you were being good, that could have attracted to you someone who was in so much pain and so have no love. They feel they're so horrible. They feel they're so unloved. They feel they're so unlovable that draws them to you. Because, when I've worked with people who have been abusers, they go, I hated myself so much. All I wanted to do was, I was drawn to somebody that was loving. And this is an extreme example, and I do recognize this, and I do understand that people might find this difficult to hear. But if you as a coach can understand that once people can see how they were somehow attracting it, not because they were bad, not because they did wrong, but because they were full of love. And that actually they have a part to play in it. It takes all the negative emotionality from it. And of course, a lot of people choose still to be very angry and hate the person but it starts to just have them see this tiny little break, a tiny little gap that says, well, maybe that person was in so much pain that they were abusive towards me. Now, so that's why I believe that coaching can go into the past and do great work. I've had many, many, many clients say to me, oh my God, I've looked at my sexual abuse. I've looked at my violent father. I've looked at my, rape as a teenager. I've looked at all this, and I've always looked at it, but I've never really been able to heal it. And I believe that there's some places where we can go as a coach, if we're willing to go there, where we help them heal it. Now your forgiveness process works better. Now you can bring them into the future. And one of the things that I try and do, and I try and teach other coaches, is to, once you get somebody in openness and awareness that they may have been doing things completely unconsciously, let me say that again, completely unconsciously, that may have attracted what they didn't want, that they recognize that also attracted what they did want in their life, but might still be attracting what they don't want. Now we can deal with things now because we've been in the past. Now we can say, so let's be honest, so many people say to me, but I'm still struggling from what happened in the past. Right, how are you struggling? What are you still holding on to? What state are you in? What is that giving you? What experience is that state giving you? Because if you're still not feeling good enough, if you're still feeling angry, if you're still feeling abused, if you're still feeling whatever it is, then that is now bringing you what you don't want. So I am such a believer in being in the moment, and that coaching is not just about the future and practical when, how, if, who, where, what. It's so much more that we can do if we're just willing to be brave enough, very brave, to going where other people don't go as coaches, and being eloquent and loving and trusting. Now, trusting yourself as a coach is the biggest gift you can give yourself. You trust yourself that if you're not willing to trust yourself to go there, then how can you ever help someone release themselves from their past? You're nodding. It's a good sound.
Yeah, I was deeply contemplating. So I've got like two questions for that, and I appreciate that we haven't answered the about keeping the distance bit. But what you've just talked about lends itself to one thing that's not necessarily within your myths, which is based on what you've just said. At what point would you, if ever, say this is more of a therapeutic intervention, like counselling, psychotherapy, or something else?
Never. I never explain what I'm doing.
Okay, I never explain what I'm doing. Before you get into that, and also the comment that you made about coaches have to have compassion.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever used that word actually, but let me elaborate on it, sort of. First of all, never. I never indulge my clients' time in telling them what I'm going to do. I never indulge my clients' time, for example, just to give you another example, which is not on my list, but it's definitely in my mind, is that I'd never indulge or waste my clients' time by asking them for feedback on me, for example. For me, that's just not professional, and it's a waste of time. And if you're not professional enough to be a coach, you shouldn't be coaching. My belief is that, sorry, I can't remember your second question now. Sorry, I've got so
compassion. Yeah, the first one was about would you refer?
Compassion is not a word I would ever use. The word I would use is to be aware and maybe compassionate of where they are, but you do not go there. You don't go there. Tell you a very quick little story. Tony and I were on a train yesterday in Barcelona, and we get on the train, we're sitting there, and we watch something happen, which is a woman and a child and a man, and the man is trying to force himself upon the woman. She's pushing him away. They're all talking in Italian and Spanish, sorry. in Italy now, Spanish, and he's being quite aggressive and he's trying to force herself, kissing her, and she's pushing him away, and the little boy's sitting there like this, right, and he goes to get off the train, and while he's standing at the door, he's crying. She's crying. And he gets off the train, and the little boy runs to the window to see his father, and then gets and sits back down and vomits. I, as a coach, cannot ignore that. That's what I'm on the planet for. So I went with some tissues and I went up. I can't speak the language. The woman hardly spoke any English. But I just said to the little boy, I just touched his head and gave him a tissue and everything. He doesn't speak any English. And I just said to her, how are you doing? Are you okay? And she started telling me in sort of broken English, we're separated, but he's upset and I said, is he not nice to the child, to this little boy? And she said, no, he's okay. But I said, is he not nice to you? She said, no, he's not nice to me. And the little boy is very upset. And I just said, look, here's the thing, honey. You need to keep yourself safe. You need to help this little boy who's 8 years old. You need to help him understand that he's loved and it's not his fault. And, because you could see in his little face. And obviously the vomiting straight away is like, because it's like all over the train. Tony's going, yeah, of course you're going to go and talk to them. But my point of telling you that is, for me, that's what being a coach is all about. It's not about being sorted and all the phones are switched off and you're in a room and now you start going through the questions you already used. This is about being in the moment and yes, having compassion for them, but being willing to help them whatever they need. So, obviously the woman said that he'd not been nice to her, and I just dealt with really because the child was suffering. But my point is, if that had been a client, I'd have definitely gone, even in a bad state that she was in, like, well, how are you being with him? Now, that sounds so harsh. It doesn't sound like compassion, but it's the best thing you can do. And one of the things I learned from Robbins was you need to deal things in the moment they happen, because that's when people are in their worst state. That's when they are, in some ways, most open to help, because they're in a lot of pain. So the whole practical kind of superficial way of coaching, as you know, I don't agree with. I think you've got to get in there, you've got to get down and dirty with it if you necessarily need to, and you need to be you need to meet them where they are, and then you do your best to get them into a place of power so they can handle with the situation. Now, if compassion comes into that, yes, I think I agree with the word. It's just not compassion so that you can be in there with them as the victim. I don't think that's helpful.
It's an interesting point, because one of the things that often comes up during the accreditation process, and when we're talking to perhaps more inexperienced coaches, is you go into your coaching session with the how are you doing, how are things for you, in the sheer hope that nothing has happened, and then when they say, well, thanks for asking, and it all comes out, you can't then go, well, sorry to hear about that, what do you want to talk about today, and then just get back to the atypical topic.
Even worse, how have you done since last time when you said you were going to do that? That for me is even worse. I'm very sympathetic of, hi, how are you doing? What do you need today? I don't necessarily use those words, but I'm sympathetic of that. But the whole, now, last time we spoke, you said this, and how have you done? For me, that is just, the accountability thing is an absolute no-no to me. We are not there to hold them accountable, in my view. We are there to see where they're at in the moment. And if they haven't done what they said they're going to do, let them tell us that they haven't done what they've said they're going to do. And we ask questions. What prevented you? What made it difficult? How can I assist you if this is still the right thing for you to go forward? Oh, well, I changed my mind. what made you change your mind? What was different? What was, and I think that the million questions that you can ask in the moment, as opposed to being up here going, well, they said this last time and I've got this in my notes, and actually let me see how they are and maybe they'll be all right today. I mean, I've had people go, you know, when we were working with Nick James, my son, and we were coaches to all of his mastermind clients, people say, I don't really think, booked in with you, Nicki, but I don't really think I need anything today. So I just go, fab. So, you know, what's critical to resolve in your life? Now later, we're still at it. And that's somebody saying they don't need anything, you know. Lots of people trying to avoid, you know, they've paid for coaching sessions with you and they're trying to avoid. They go, oh, no, everything's perfect. Well, what's not perfect? What's still happening in your life that you don't like? What are you still holding on to that's preventing you from having the life you want? There are so many questions, but it's not the question, it's how you ask it. You ask it from a place of, I'm here as the coach to ensure that you have a better life. And you avoiding things, or you being, you know, in your pattern of, you know, avoidance or whatever, or victim or whatever it is, you know, I can't as a coach let you get away with that because you've paid me money. I'm like, I need to help you whether you think you need help or not.
Yeah, which leans into so like one of your other myths about you must have some sort of contract, which is something I'm interested on, because a lot of a lot of the other therapies, transaction analysis, everything else, they're very big on contracting, and I can't lie, I have a bit of an issue around more the big C contracting, which I would call the first part about this is the way that I work, and if that's not what you want, then find somebody else. But so I'm very interested about what you mean by having a contract or not, as the case would be.
So number one, if somebody comes towards me for whatever reason, they've seen something on social media or on my website, or they've been recommended, I believe that something in their unconscious, hear that, unconscious, has given them the belief that if they're coached by me, that things are going to get handled. So I never say, this is the way I work, and if that's not the way you work, go to somebody else, because I think they've been drawn to me. This is because I'm thinking more esoterically, more spiritually than I am practically. Okay, so the first thing is, I would never say to somebody, I'm not the coach for you. I've only ever refused one person coaching, and that's somebody whose behavior was unacceptable to me. I'd coached her for many years, on and off, first with her husband and then her on her own. And she was not really open to looking at herself. And therefore, she was wanting me to coach her because I think she wanted to sort of, I don't know, can't really think of the words. She wanted to prove somehow that she was uncoachable. And it was all like, Nicki Vee, you've got this reputation that you can coach anybody, so coach me. And I went, look, I don't believe that that's the right energy for us to go into a coaching relationship. It's once in 20 years. The rest of the time, I always believe that if somebody comes towards me, that I need to coach them. Now, so I don't have this is how I work. But the second thing is, I don't make them commit to anything, because I believe that proper coaching is when somebody's in a lot of pain and they reach out to you because for some reason, completely unconsciously, esoterically, or whatever you call it, they believe that you're the answer, that you're the person that can help them. In which case, I don't ask anything of them, right? Because why would I? Because they've asked me for help. And obviously, I am doing this professionally, so, they pay. And once somebody has said, right, I want you to coach me on this or any other, because by the way, don't forget, people come with the issue they think needs solving, but it's never the issue that really needs solving. And so I go, great, this is my fee. I've had people go, well, you know, if you were ethical, you do it for nothing and all that. You know, like, you just have to deal with all that and just go, look, I understand that, but with respect to my other clients, this is you know, if you were to tell me you haven't got any money, then maybe I would do some pro bono, but is that the truth? So I'm very keen to get people to tell me the truth. And if somebody does tell me the truth and say, look, I literally am penniless, then I'll just do a session with them and help them as much as I can in one go. But here's the thing, the contract that you're doing it, you have to ask yourself, why do I do that? What am I trying to protect? The biggest place this happens is in corporate, and I know we're talking about corporate in a couple of weeks' time, which is that people are trying to get the company to commit to a certain amount of time. And I disagree with that completely. I've watched many, many very good coaches lose clients and lose business because they're trying to get a company to sign a contract. I was an HR director. I had £1 million budget to spend on coaching, training, recruitment stuff. And if anybody had asked me to sign the contract, I'd go, why do you want me to sign the contract? Well, why? And they'd go, well, because you're committing to 6 sessions. Or I'll go, well, no, I'm not. I'm committing to asking you to help us. And if you can help us, then let's do it. But if you can't, and I never signed a contract the whole time I was there, in the whole 7 or 8 years that I was in HR. And I've never had a contract with any client that I've had, and I've had hundreds and hundreds of clients. Tony and I, we've never even had people. The only time we've ever had anything like contract was terms and conditions when people were paying at the back of the room to come on a seminar with us in our retreat or something like that, where, you know, we're doing a speaking thing, they're paying money at the back of the room to be on the event, and we're basically going, we've got some terms and conditions which says, look, you know, you've got a cooling off period if you want to cancel. And if we had to cancel for some sort of act of God, then clearly we'll just change the dates or something. We just wrote terms and conditions for that. But apart from that, we've never done anything.
Okay, we're coming up to the extended, the other 45 minutes mark. I'm mindful that I would like to find out, you know, if Terry or Avril, so like, or Dawn, if she's still on the line, so like, have got any questions. Before we get into that, though, you know, there will be a lot of coaches, so like, listening to this, who are, you know, potentially, you know, like, new to coaching, or they've just, you know, like, come out of, you know, like, a coaching school per se, if I can use that in, you know, air quotes, you know, who are listening to this and going, well, that's, you know, so like, that's, you know, like, potentially, you're like way above, you know, like, my skill set. What would you say to the, you know, to, you know, like, all coaches, you know, like, whether they're fresh out of coaching school, or, you know, like, those experience going, actually, you know, like, there's a lot of merit in what you've said there. What would be the message that you would give them in terms of, you know, like, what they should be doing from now on in, you know, with their clients?
Yeah. Okay. The first thing is, love it, enjoy it, love them, see them as just, they're just not quite where they need to be yet to have the life they want to have. So love them, love yourself, know that you have enough. I mean, when I used to do, I know you know, David, I used to do a level 5 coach training 5 days, which I don't do anymore. And I used to say to people on the first day, we're going to do some live coaching. You're going to do, you know, you're going to coach each other. And please do not think, bring to it your biggest problems. And don't think, oh, well, you know, if only I could have Nicki Vee coach me, I've got some other participant. I'd say, because with the right intention, a newbie coach can do just what Nicki Vee can do after 20 years. Because you just have to be in the moment, present with the person. What do I mean by that? That for me is so important. It's like, I'm empty. The coach has to be empty. I am present with the person I'm with. I'm picking up, this is something we haven't had time to talk about. I'm not listening to the story. This is bullshit most of the time. I'm watching, I'm hearing, I'm picking up on nonverbal clues. And when I see something or sense it, that actually needs having a question, let me ask a question about that. Let me ask a question of what I sense. Now, that's what I say to new coaches. Look, enjoy it. Have you know, give yourself a break. Stop trying to remember all the questions. Stop trying to remember the processes you've been taught. Actually be present with the person. Let a great question or a great metaphor or a great, I know you're going to hear loads about this from Tony V next week, metaphors, stories, models, you know, let something come through that's really helpful to the person, and then ask them a question about it. And then one of my greatest mentors was a woman called Marianne Parianti. She's a French woman who was a fabulous coach, fabulous woman. And I said, oh, this seems so difficult. This coaching seems so difficult. She said, no, she said, coaching's easy. She says, you ask a great question, obviously like my favorite question, which would be the first question, what's critical for you to resolve right now today? That's my first question at any session. And then she said, listen to their answer, but don't listen too well, just get your sense of them, and then coach the arse off the answer. That's what I'd say to new coaches, because that's what she said to me. And then I never forgot that. And I went, get out of my head, get out of all the questions I've learned, get out of it and just be present with them. Ask them great questions, listen out for the clues, the metaphors, the emotions, the things that you can ask great questions about, so that they have new realizations about themselves, then they make new decisions and follow through.
Yeah.
Job done.
Great. I've got 101 questions I would ask about everything you've talked about.
Good. Well, I'm on again next week.
Yeah. Well, Tony, so there'll be plenty more coming your way. Don't worry about that.
You'll ask Tony, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm sure I will. So, Terry, Avril, do you have any questions you would like to ask Nicki?
Taking it all in, happily making notes. Thank you, Nicki.
Yeah. I can only just hear you, Avril, so I'll take that. I'll take that as a no. In which case, since if there are no further questions, I would invite everyone who's listening, just to take a moment of reflection. Think, right, from what you've heard, if you had to identify, and this is rhetorical, what are you going to take forward? What are you going to do with what you've heard? Because there are a lot. I mean, from my perspective, there are lots of things that have come out. That even I'm now questioning in the things that in the ways that I do. And I think from a from a perspective is if there was one right way, it would be a bit like, well, this is the only way to do it, and having that ability to just open yourself. If nothing else, I love that. Just be an empty vessel. Just be there, and move away from that need to think, right, well, I've got all of my powerful questions written down. I've got all of my models, and I must ask this and I must do that, and just go with the flow. And be with the person. I think is so incredibly valuable, and I think that also leads into what you were saying about the trust. Just trust yourself in the fact that if you're there to help, then just be there to help. Yeah. Nicki, it has been
beautifully put, David.
Thank
beautifully.
You. I try my best. Occasionally these things come out. It's rare, but occasionally they do. It is, Nicki. It has been it's been an interesting experience today. Bearing in mind with the times and everything, but
well, I've never been on Zoom on my phone before, so I'm afraid I'm a bit of a technophobe. So forgive me for not having my computer with me.
The bit that you missed before you came on, my Zoom, I couldn't get my camera or my microphone or anything working this morning,
God.
and I was thinking, oh great, I've got Nicki this afternoon. I couldn't get the background work, so we had all this conversation while we were waiting for you. So wonderful. I would genuinely like to say, Nicki, it has been an absolute pleasure as always, Tony. I could have continued this conversation for hours and picked up on loads of things. I know that you have some other hosts for the talking about the corporate. I'll be attending that, so certainly expect some questions from myself. We have Tony, or I will be with Tony next week, and then the week after, I'll be with Tony and Nicki to like really get into the depths of, right, okay, relationship coaching, how's that working? So
but don't forget, Tony's on tomorrow.
Oh yes, and I'll be, Tony will be.
And honestly, people need to listen to it, because it is, even if you've had your first client, how to get your first client. He absolutely goes through all the wonderful points that we were privileged to assist hundreds of starters who were on Nick's mastermind, and also obviously on Master Coach over 4 or 5 years. And he's really honed down these 10 real steps that you need to have in place to get your first client. But even if you've got your first client, this is a really great thing to do. So that's tomorrow.
Yeah, it's going to be really, really good. So Terry Averill, thank you very much, Solly, for joining us live. Apologies again for the little bit of a late start, but from my perspective, you're like well worth the wait.
Thank you.
And for everybody, so like listening either live on Facebook or to the recording, please follow our blog. Please follow us on social media. Connect with the webinars that we have. Ask us any questions that you've got. We're here to assist. And once again, my name is David Munro-Jones. I'm the Ops Director for the IAPC&M. I'm also the current Acting Head of Accreditation. And I look forward to seeing you all on our next webinars. So please take care, stay safe, and I look forward to seeing you all soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye-bye, Avril.
Bye, Nicki.
Thanks, guys.